The sheriff's voice cut through the tension, sharp and commanding. "Hands where I can see them." Across the ranch yard, Madison Lewis, local HOA president and self-proclaimed guardian of community standards, was screeching like a banshee in a sweater set. She was mid-tantrum, red-faced, ranting about how I had locked her out of her neighborhood, completely oblivious to the shining DEA badge clipped to my belt and the sting operation she had just stomped into like a toddler with a loaded paintball gun. The gate she'd trespassed through had been rigged for surveillance for weeks. What she didn't know, couldn't have possibly known, was that she just walked directly into a federal operation aimed at dismantling a rural cartel pipeline. And she'd done it with all the grace and subtlety of a screech owl in a golf cart. Freeze frame. Yep. That's me. I'm Colton Rhodes, former DEA, now special liaison to the local narcotics task force. The guy who bought a 20-acre ranch just outside the reach of the overly beige nightmare that was the Silver Pines HOA. Also the guy whose private well Madison illegally tapped to water her tulips and hydrangeas. So, what did I do when I found out? I flushed her entire irrigation system with recycled livestock waste. And buddy, that was just the beginning. Started 6 months earlier. After 15 years in the field raiding meth labs, gathering intel, and getting shot at in more languages than I can count, I was ready for something quiet. Peace. Real peace. I found it in a stretch of high country pasture land about a mile off the main road, tucked between forested ridges and cow-dotted fields. My own slice of heaven. Quiet nights. Clear skies. No neighbors. Or so I thought. Enter Madison. She ran the HOA like it was her private fiefdom. Picture Dolores Umbridge with a clipboard and access to Google Earth. She had her own golf cart rigged with flashing yellow lights, a megaphone, and a pair of binoculars that probably cost more than my truck. She visited me twice during my first week, not to welcome me, of course, but to introduce herself, which was Madison speak for passive-aggressive commentary disguised as neighborly concern. She criticized the red on my barn. It clashes with the community's neutral color palette. My working dogs, their barking might trigger some of our retirees' anxiety, and the gravel driveway. We encourage concrete for visual harmony. I explained calmly more than once that my ranch wasn't part of her HOA, that my property fell just outside their jurisdiction. Technically. Apparently, technically means nothing to a woman like Madison. The real spark that lit the fuse? A drone. I was brushing down my mare when I heard it, an angry little buzz overhead. I looked up and saw a sleek surveillance drone hovering right above the stables. Guess Madison decided she needed aerial recon. I waved. Then I walked inside, grabbed my 12-gauge, and turned it into expensive confetti. 20 minutes later, she was at my gate, screaming into the intercom about destroyed private property. I reminded her that aerial surveillance over private land without consent was illegal. She called me a menace. I smiled and said, "Madison, I work for the federal government. You should be more specific." I hadn't planned on weaponizing my badge. Not then. I was semi-retired, just doing occasional consulting. But when she filed an official complaint with the HOA claiming my property was unregistered and in setback violation, I knew I needed to get creative. Because here's the thing, this ranch wasn't just about peace and fresh air. It was a location of strategic interest. My team had been watching a property about a half-mile down the dirt road, quiet place, owned by a man with heavy ties to cartel operations out of Phoenix. We suspected his barn was being used as a rural transfer station. So Madison's antics weren't just annoying. They were dangerous. I tried diplomacy first. Invited the HOA board to a barbecue. 2 members showed up. Madison didn't. Over beers, they admitted she tried to get them to vote my land into the HOA using some obscure clause from the 1980s. That's when I decided to start digging. I installed a water monitor on my system after noticing the pressure dropping at odd hours, always around 4 a.m. Traced it back to a PVC line running under the fence. It fed into Madison's garden beds like a parasitic root. So I rerouted the backup tank, one that collected gray water from livestock cleaning. The next morning, her lawn smelled like a slaughterhouse. She stormed over, furious. I told her to check her plumbing permits before complaining. That shut her up for a few days. Then came the petition. She went door to door, trying to annex my ranch into the HOA. Promised residents she'd get rid of the dangerous man at the end of the road. One guy signed it while suffering from food poisoning and later apologized to me. Then came the letters. Anonymous tips written in shaky, aggressive handwriting. Remove visible firearms, stop playing country music after 6 p.m. and my personal favorite, you are being watched. Which made it all the more poetic when, one night, my motion sensors lit up and I walked outside to find Madison on my property. In the middle of the night. Holding a crowbar. She claimed I had cut off her access to community water. I reminded her again that it was my well. She screamed, called 911, and said I was holding her hostage. The sheriff showed up 10 minutes later. I handed over my badge and ID. Madison didn't notice the 3 other unmarked vehicles parked nearby. Or the agents inside. She had just walked into a federal sting and we were more than happy to let her keep digging. Days later, she filed a complaint with the county sheriff's office. Said I was running a drug lab in my barn. She attached blurry cell phone photos of fertilizer bags and feed sacks. Claimed she could smell chemicals. Suspiciously stacked, she said. She thought she'd cracked a cartel case. Problem was, she had just blown a carefully staged investigation wide open. The sheriff's office forwarded the tip to the narcotics unit. The narcotics unit included a liaison one of mine. I got the heads up within hours. Hey, my contact said, barely holding back laughter. You know a woman named Madison just accused you of running a meth operation because your compost pile stinks? I let out a long sigh and said, don't open the file. Not yet. I have a plan. Because suddenly I saw an opportunity. The guy down the road, our actual suspect, was cautious. Careful. Never made a move without cover. We needed someone dumb enough to poke the bear. Enter Madison. First, she sent a formal HOA notice, fined me $200 for unauthorized livestock containment. That's what they called my barn. I mailed it back with a post-it. You might want to check whose name is on the Federal Registry before you dig deeper. That earned me another visit. She showed up in full HOA uniform, polo, lanyard, clipboard, face like a sunburned lemon. Did you receive our notice? She asked. I did, I said. And the last time someone ordered me to comply, they were holding an Uzi. You're a little underdressed. She stomped off. 2 days later, a new drone flew over. This one was higher altitude, higher quality. She thought she was being sneaky. We intercepted the footage shots of my barn, my truck, even my shed. So we sent it back with a sticky note, smile next time. Next, she hired a PI. Budget guy with a long lens and an old Ford. Parked near the tree line like we wouldn't notice. We waved. One of my guys even set up a lawn chair and ate popcorn, staring straight at the camera. Then it got interesting. The PI wasn't just watching me. He was watching the neighbor to the cartel property. Madison, in her paranoia, thought we were in cahoots. When the cartel's runner made a drop, Madison caught it on camera and sent the footage to her PI, thinking he was law enforcement. He wasn't. He was on our list. And now, thanks to Madison, we had a traceable digital connection. She had inserted herself into a federal investigation. And she wasn't done. She showed up again wearing body cam glasses and carrying a folder. Started rattling off violations. Filmed herself like she was hosting a true crime podcast. I called the sheriff. She called it her civic duty. She left the folder behind inside. A report that looked like something from a conspiracy theorist's bunker. Arrows, timelines, maps. Labeled my barn as a drug transit point. We decided to bait her. We planted a crate near the barn labeled Fertilizer 50. Set up a fake conversation about delivery times. Madison's drone came back. We let it film everything. 2 days later, we intercepted a message from her to the cartel's runner. She offered him footage. Said she had proof of a rival operation. Wanted immunity and asked him to handle the neighbor. The runner agreed to meet. She said yes. And she wanted to meet at my ranch. My handler just laughed. She's handing us everything. The sting was set. Agents played roles, one as the buyer, one as a mechanic. I stayed out of sight. Cameras were rolling. Madison arrived at 4:30 on the dot, dressed like she was about to present a neighborhood beautification award. She handed over a flash drive. I want immunity, she said. And I want something done about that man. He's dangerous. That was it. Obstruction. Conspiracy. Attempted coercion of a suspected cartel affiliate. Then she called 911. Claimed she was assisting law enforcement. Said she needed backup. The sheriff arrived. Lights off. Calm. Madison pointed at the barn, ranting about barrels and chemicals. That's when I stepped forward, badge flashing. "Ma'am," I said, "you're trespassing on federal property during an active investigation." Her face drained of color. "No, who called this in? I'm helping." "No," I said, "you tried to make a deal with a cartel runner. You gave him falsified evidence. You accused a federal agent of corruption. That's a felony." She stammered, confused. One agent cuffed her while another bagged the flash drive. Even in the cruiser, she kept talking. Said she'd done it for the community. The HOA was stunned. They tried to pick up where she left off. Sent me another violation notice, said my solar panels weren't aesthetic. So I made a new plan. Used her files to expose misuse of funds, paid the PI and bought the drones with HOA money. I filed the evidence with the county. Held a barbecue. Explained everything. A week later, we voted to dissolve the HOA. 68% in favor. Gone. Madison? She got probation, a fat fine, and a criminal record. Had to sell her house. Moved out of state. Silver Pines is quiet now. No drones. No fines. Just neighbors. A community garden. Kids playing. And a new sign at my gate. Trespassers will be shot. Survivors will be interrogated. People laugh when they see it. That's fine. Because around here, we remember what happened when one Madison tried. And we sure as hell aren't letting it happen again. For